Despite the most bizarre life imaginable after her childhood, she remained intact, true to herself. She needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic.
It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
I hope you can find it in your hearts to understand and to give me the time and space that has been lacking in recent years.
A girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Well, it obviously
put your own
means,
interpretation.
obviously means two very happy people.
Yes.
Once
As you
again,
can
congratulations.
see.
Well, from us, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very kind.
In the summer of 1980, the Queen told me that a young girl was coming to stay for the weekend.
Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long. Was he completely off beam? Was he?
Sorry.
Was he completely off beam when he said we wouldn't have to wait too long?
No.
When I joined Buckingham Palace way back in 1976, it was already rumoured that Prince of Wales would be marrying somebody like Princess Mary Astrid or Amanda Knatchbull. There were rumours that he would be marrying somebody else. There were always suitors around Prince Charles. He was the most eligible bachelor in the world at that time, heir to the throne of England. So he was never short of female companions. I saw him occasionally with the Queen. He'd stay at Buckingham Palace. His suite of rooms were at the palace. He had his own valet. He had his own household. And he was very independent. And really, he was searching for someone who could provide him with an heir and a spare. That was his main priority. He was getting old. And the Queen had said to him, "Isn't it about time you settled down, Charles? Isn't it about time you made us grandparents?"
Well, Princess Diana was the daughter of an earl. Her father was Lord Spencer, and he was later Viscount Althorp. They had a house on the Sandringham estate, and then when Diana's grandfather died, they moved to the family stately home, Althorp. And the Spencer family were quite an ancient aristocratic family, and Diana was very proud of her heritage. I mean, they were actually probably grander than the royal family. Well, Diana Spencer, as she was, is probably one of the most insecure people I'd ever met. She was also a real mixture of being completely naive and yet worldly wise. She was always different, so she was always fascinating.
She now faced possibly the most daunting initiation test for would-be members of the royal family, ordeal by the media. Her flat came under siege. She was followed wherever she went. Even under this pressure, she stayed calm, and in doing so, she won respect. How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us up.
Well, it is, naturally.
And you're coping with it all right, though? You seem to be doing very well.
Well, I'm still around.
In February 1981, the waiting was over. Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Charles and Lady Diana were engaged. The ring was a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. The couple looked happy and relaxed, delighted, like everyone else, that a wedding would take place. Earl Spencer and Lady Diana's stepmother celebrated among the crowds outside the palace gates. Inside, Lady Diana was facing up to a future she could hardly have dreamt of.
I personally think that Diana fell in love with Prince Charles. It's obvious to me that she was a young, naive girl and she fell in love with the prince. Now, if you watch that piece of footage when Prince Charles is asked, "Are you in love, sir?" Princess Diana's beaming.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Well, it
Put your own interpretation.
obviously means two very happy people.
Yes.
Once again,
As you can see.
congratulations. Well, from us, congratulations.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much. Very kind.
And she looks at him as if to say, "What are you talking about? Don't you know what love is?" That was the problem from the beginning. Charles didn't really know what love was.
Well, the cracks in their relationship, I think they began to show very quickly. Because Diana didn't understand. I mean, after she became engaged to Prince Charles, he never seemed to be around. He was always so busy. And she was moved into Buckingham Palace, and she had her own apartment there, and he was sort of down the corridor. And she was absolutely on her own. I mean, a friend of mine actually was her footman and told me a lot about her at the time. And she was very lonely. She didn't feel she could have her girlfriends there. And I mean, Buckingham Palace is quite a strange place for a teenage girl to be incarcerated, which is really what she was. I think Diana had terrible jitters on her wedding day. In fact, the night before, she'd wanted to get out of the whole thing. And she'd had a sort of funny, jokey evening with her sisters. And they said, "You can't get out of it now, your face is on the tea towels." And that made her laugh. But she'd discovered about Camilla. She discovered that Charles was giving her gifts. And she didn't know the half of it, but she knew that Camilla was a very important person in her fiancé's life. And she said she became obsessed.
I, Diana Francis,
I, Diana Francis,
take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George,
take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George,
to my wedded husband,
to my wedded husband,
to have and to hold,
to have and to hold,
from this day forward,
this day forward,
according to God's holy law,
according to God's holy law,
and thereto I give thee my troth.
and thereto I give thee my troth.
I remember the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer very well because I was at Buckingham Palace. She says, "But did you ever look at the footage of that?" She says, "Next time you look at it, watch me." She says, "Can't you see me looking from side to side? Can you see me doing that? Do you know what I'm doing? I'm looking for her. I'm looking for Camilla." And she was there. She was even at my wedding. So this spectre of Camilla was always there in the princess's life.
She's very good-natured, and it doesn't worry her. Publicity doesn't worry her. As you've seen from her way she's dealt with the press, she's taken it all in her stride.
In the early days, Diana's light was small, but it began to shine brighter and brighter and brighter. And it was a sort of a Star is Born situation. Prince Charles would say to her, "Well, I married you, I made you a princess. You weren't born royal. I'm the royal." So it would peeve him when on royal visits, people would be shouting on one side of the street, "We want Diana, we want Diana."
I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had two wives To have covered both sides of the street. And I could have walked down the middle, directing the operation.
This is a man who's been born to be king. This is a man who has been treated from the very beginning as a god, suddenly being eclipsed by this woman. He wasn't very happy.
To be engaged to such a lovely lady, and my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many, many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
Well, I think after they got married and they went on their honeymoon, even then things were starting to unravel a bit, because I don't think it matched what Diana had expected. She had this vision of being like a fairy princess and being carried away into the sunset. But the minute she was married, her husband was off working. On the honeymoon, she was so in love, but he spent a lot of time reading books. You know, she was on this enormous yacht, Britannia, surrounded by like 200 crew, and yet she was on her own and she didn't know how to deal with it. She was too young and too naive, and Charles was on the upper deck reading and sunbathing, and she was lonely. I don't think it really sank in. She was very naive, and I think she thought, oh, one day I'll be queen, fine. But I think it was really more the pressure of being on such public display that got to her, and I think that's the pressure that gets to every girl that marries into the royal family. But no one had ever experienced this before. Diana was the first one. And I remember the Queen sort of saying, it's just because she's young and new and it'll all calm down. Because it never calmed down, it just got worse. So she was under a lot of pressure.
The princess changed enormously from the time I met her, aged 18, to the very end. I was there from the beginning to the very end. And I can tell you, in the beginning, she was a shy, naive, quiet girl who knew nothing about the world. She was thrown in at the deep end and told to swim, and she learned quickly. I remember very well Prince William being born, because on that particular day, the Queen rang her bell and said, "Send for a bottle of champagne, my favorite, Krug. We'll all have a glass of champagne to toast the birth of my grandson, William." So I stood in the Queen's sitting room at Buckingham Palace with a glass of champagne, toasting William's health.
Does Prince William have a favourite toy?
Jamie, he loves his koala bear he's got. But he hasn't got anything particular. He just likes something with a bit of noise. He got a plastic whale that throws things out the top, little balls.
During this time, of course, Diana was visiting Balmoral and Sandringham and all the royal residences, and actually got to know me very well. I remember her showing me the honeymoon pictures. I remember her telling me that she was carrying another baby, which was Harry. She was at Balmoral wearing a very beautiful tartan evening dress for the Gillies ball, and she pushed me into the dining room. "Put your hand on my tummy," she said. I said, "No, I can't do that. You're a royal princess." She took my hand and placed it on her tummy. "Can you feel that?" she said. And a little kick. She says, "It's a boy." "You shouldn't have told me that. That is a state secret. Now, if it gets out, you'll blame me." She says, "But I'm trusting you with that secret." It was the first time she'd actually trusted me.
Granny was christened in this.
Great-granny.
Great-granny. And I was. Look, I was christened in this. Looks remarkably well, despite it.
Look, Zara. Zara. Zara, look.
There were photographs of Diana looking sad, and I think when they posed in front of Ayers Rock, they looked very apart, although they were standing together. And I think perhaps there was an element of sadness that was showing in the pictures. And when we can only tell by the close-ups that photographers were taking at the time. And I think there was an element of something not being right, or Diana looking really miserable, it wasn't like they didn't have any sort of togetherness. I think after Harry was born, the relationship seriously broke down. It just hadn't worked out like both of them expected, and even before the wedding, Diana had serious doubts, and so did Charles. Charles's friends, his close friends, warned him, this is not going to work, Charles. She's too young, she's too naive, and you're an imaginary prince, she doesn't know you at all. It was just like a phenomenon. I mean, people would scream when they saw Diana. It was almost like Beatlemania, but it was Diana mania. And Charles felt, an irrelevance. And he didn't like it, he wasn't used to it. He'd been brought up since the moment he opened his eyes that he was the one, he was the future, he was going to be the king. And suddenly he's been completely overtaken by this gorgeous young wife who everybody wanted to see, and everybody wanted to shake her hand.
I saw correspondence between them. I saw correspondence from the princess to the queen, which said how happy she was, and how she loved to be a wife, and how much she would support Charles in his future career. And so the first 5 years of the princess's marriage, she felt that she could make it work. The princess made a fatal mistake. She fell in love with her prince.
You must remember that the princess lived within the British royal family for 15 years. She knew exactly what went on within it. She knew how things were done. She was at times extraordinarily unhappy, and her husband did nothing. She felt very wretched much of the time, but at the same time she was a mother, and she had to maintain a brave face for her children. She didn't want them too affected by her evident distress at finding herself in a loveless marriage with a husband who was carrying on an affair and not even bothering to hide it from her.
Do you know, I think the princess's problems stem from childhood. I think because she was abandoned as a child, because her mother ran away to Australia when Diana was young, I think the princess felt as if she wasn't good enough. James Hewitt came along at a time when the princess was first looking for someone to love.
I have no comment. No comment.
I'm afraid.
Will you be prepared to make a comment to us later on in the day?
No, I have no comment.
He just happened to be there. He just happened to be a dashing cavalry officer. He just happened to push all the right buttons. I have to tell you, he was there after Prince Harry was born, not before Prince Harry was born. Because there's a great myth in the world that people think that Harry is James Hewitt's son. That's impossible. She didn't know James Hewitt at that time. You have to look at the chronological order of the way things happened. So Harry was born. Prince Charles had told her, "I don't love you. I only married you to have children." She then begins to look for someone to love. And James Hewitt was there. I was the one she trusted. No one else knew of this relationship. And I would ferry him to and from Highgrove, from Kemble railway station, in the back of my car, and take him back to the train station when they'd had tea or he'd spent the night. But this was a real big secret. The other big secret I was keeping was, of course, Prince Charles was seeing Camilla Parker Bowles. No one knew. The world didn't know at that stage.
For the first few years, it seemed this royal honeymoon would never end. But behind the scenes, it was all very different.
Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife when you took on the vow of marriage?
Yes, absolutely.
And you were?
Yes. Until it became irretrievably broken down. Us both having tried.
Prince Charles did an official biography with Jonathan Dimbleby and also a TV programme. It was really all about being Prince of Wales. It was the anniversary of being Prince of Wales. But of course, Dimbleby, being a very, smart operator, asked him the question, which was about Camilla and about his marriage. And I think that, very honestly, Charles answered it. He probably regrets it, but he was honest.
And the princess that evening was due to go out to the Serpentine Gallery to see her old friend Lord Palumbo and open his new exhibition. I can't go. I'm not going. I'm not going. It'll be too humiliating. The whole world now knows that Charles has been having an affair. He's admitted it. You are going, I said. I've got nothing to wear. Yes, you have got something to wear. I went up to her wardrobe room and picked out a Christina Strombolian dress with a fishtail. This is what you're going to wear, I said. I can't fit into it. Yes, you can. Put it on. So she slipped it on. Now, to complement that, I think we should have the pearl choker and the sapphire. That's all you need. High heels and those jewels. Right, she put them on and she looked $1 million. Remember, when you go out there, I said, you stride, you hold your head high. You smile, you engage, firm handshake. Say to yourself, I am Diana, Princess of Wales, and I am here to stay. Say it to yourself.
The marriage problems of Charles and Diana have cast a shadow over the royal family. Now the Queen has decided to bring the whole issue to a head by advising them to divorce. Part of the Queen's concern is the continuing effect on Prince Harry and Prince William of their parents' marital troubles, which were brought out so starkly and so publicly in the Princess's Panorama TV interview. It's understood Prince Charles, seen here recently with his sons at Eton, shares his mother's view that a divorce is now desirable.
There are no constitutional implications for Prince Charles himself. He remains heir to the throne and will in due course succeed under the Act of Settlement.
There was a change of the rules which govern how divorces were conducted last autumn, and that change provided that you no longer needed to name the person with whom the other spouse had committed adultery.
This morning, Princess Diana was at her gym again. The photographers weren't happy.
Very funny, Mom! Woohoo!
The legal discussions are not likely to be straightforward. There do not appear to be any arguments over the custody of Prince William and Prince Harry, but Princess Diana does seem determined to secure a good financial settlement.
The Queen, here attending today's Gulf War Memorial Service at St Paul's Cathedral in London,
had been awaiting Diana's decision since last December. Then she wrote to both Prince Charles and Diana, advising them that it was in their best interest to seek an early divorce. The Queen took the unusual step of intervening in what became a public manor.
The entrance to the princess's London home tonight. She's said to be inside Kensington Palace, very sad and very pensive, according to friends.
The press pack is gathering at the gates of Kensington Palace this evening, but the Princess of Wales has turned camera shy ahead of tomorrow's Panorama screening.
The Prince now faces some difficult choices. Should he seek a divorce? Should he marry Mrs. Parker Bowles?
With regard to the Princess of Wales, if there is a divorce, then she will not be Queen.
Lawyers say the divorce issue could still go to court.
I think she's playing a clever game. I think she is aware absolutely of what she is doing. She's convinced she ought to have an ambassadorial role, and that is what the public wants. And she's convinced that by doing this, she's going to make sure her husband realizes that.
You've been very open about all of this and what you've said. Do you now hope that this issue and expect this issue to go away? Is that what you hope will now happen?
Yeah. Do you think Di was worth it? Well, is Di worth 17 million? You can still comment, can't you? I mean, would you pay your wife 17 million if you got divorced?
Oh, well, probably if I had it, I would, yeah.
Very surprised at that. I thought it was a very peculiar way of doing it. On the face of it, it was rather discourteous to the Queen. But Princess Diana is very good at manipulating the media, and it may well be that she did it like this to show that she could do her own thing, and also to give her a stronger bargaining power over the title that she wanted to have, and perhaps over the nature of the divorce settlement when it comes.
Behind closed gates at Kensington Palace, the princess was said to be deeply upset at making and declaring the decision to end the marriage. It could happen swiftly, meaning a leap year divorce. So as the public read the papers, the royal lawyers set about reading the small print. What has yet to be worked out are the complicated details of a divorce.
She's got the house, Kensington Palace, which Prince Charles has always wanted to get back because he's stuck, poor fellow, in St. James's Palace. And she has got the children, and obviously there's nothing going to change. She's got the money from Charles to keep up her lifestyle.
The only secret Diana ever kept from me was the Martin Bashir interview for Panorama. I was sent home on a Sunday afternoon. Strange, I thought. Why would she be sending me home? Go and spend some time with your family. I'm doing nothing this afternoon. Don't worry about me. The next morning I came to work. I noticed all the furniture had been moved. Why have you moved the furniture? It's not in the same place. I had a dance class. I had to move the furniture out of the way just so that we could exercise. Strange. Very strange. She avoided me for the next 2 days, never spoke to me, and then she told me that she'd made a recording with Martin Bashir for Panorama. What have you said? Well, I just put the record straight, she said.
I think every strong woman in history has had to walk down a similar path, and I think it's the strength that causes the confusion and the fear. Why is she strong? Where does she get it from? Where is she taking it? Where is she going to use it?
Something like 31 million people stopped in their tracks on that Monday night and couldn't believe what they were seeing. The Princess of Wales bearing her heart on national television. We couldn't take our eyes away from it. We couldn't believe what we were hearing.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
She was honest, open, and frank. Did you love James Hewitt? Yes, I adored him. It was too raw for most people and an embarrassment for the royal family. That was the final straw. That was the straw that broke the back of the House of Windsor. From that moment on, Diana was outcast. Her titles were stripped. She was no longer prayed for in church. She was on her own. I was the one that went out with my car, brought people back to Kensington Palace in the back seat of my car underneath a blanket, just to give the princess some love. All she was ever looking for was to be loved. She used to say to me, all I ever want, Paul, is a man to put their arms around me and say, I love you. That's not too much to ask, is it? And that's what she was searching for. Towards the end of her life, of course, she found her soulmate. Her soulmate was Hasnat Khan. Hasnat Khan had been the princess's companion for over 2 years. Nobody knew about Hasnat Khan. That was not played out on the world stage.
Diana, when she came to Pakistan, this was a country that she had fond memories of, wasn't it?
Yes, I think she enjoyed her time here. She really liked the days she spent here, I think.
And meeting your family, that must have been a special moment for her and for them.
I think it definitely was for my family, and I think she enjoyed the afternoon tea with them. I think that's a long time ago now, 1996, I think.
And in fact, Diana introduced William and Harry to Hasnat Khan, because in the princess's eyes, Hasnat was the man she was going to marry. So better the boys get used to him.
But he was very, very worried that the press would get hold of it, and he couldn't deal with that.
After they'd broken up, the princess was invited to the south of France by the Mahmoud al-Fayeds. She met Dodi al-Fayed. Did you know that the romance of the princess and Dodi al-Fayed was 30 days from beginning to end? It only lasted 30 days. That was not the love of her life. That was not the man she was going to marry.
I don't know how she'll find a husband, but I always imagined she'd end up with someone older, very powerful and rich, perhaps a sort of Onassis-type figure that really could look after her and whisk her away from everything, in the same way that Onassis did for Jacqueline Kennedy.
Diana and Dodi met long before 1997. They met at various events, film premieres, at the polo, at the horse show, the sort of places that people of their kind would meet at. When they actually fell in love in the summer of 1997, they were already friends. And then, of course, they were together in the south of France, and a relationship which was already established became a deeper and closer relationship. And when they came back to London, they'd already made arrangements to get in touch with each other. They met and they started seeing each other, and it all went on from there.
I said to the princess, when are you coming home? I'm coming home on Sunday, Paul. I'm just bored. I'm on this boat. It's freezing cold downstairs. It's boiling hot on deck. I'm sending these pictures out and nobody's coming back to me. I'm having no communication. I need to come home. But the only way home is on the Harrods jet. The only way I can get home is via Paris, because Dodi has to go to Paris to do some business for his father. How is he with you? Oh, he's very spoiling. He's very generous, the princess said. He's given me a necklace, some earrings. He's given me a watch. I said, you know what's coming next, don't you? He's gonna give you a ring. Do you think so? Oh, yes. He'll give you a ring. But remember, when he gives it to you, put it on the fourth finger of your right hand. Oh, yes. Fourth finger, right hand. I can hear her saying it. Fourth finger, right hand.
I didn't question Dodi about it, but he did come to my office, which was 2 doors away from his father's office in Harrods, and he did express to me the depth of his love for the princess. And he said to me, Michael, there'll never, ever be another woman for me, never.
I knew Dodi, and he was probably one of the most charming people you could ever meet. And he's also rather cool. Had an American accent, beautifully dressed, and he treated Diana like the princess she was. Nobody else had treated her like that. I mean, with Hasnat Khan, she had to sort of hide him at the back of her car, and they had to, they mostly ate in, or if they went out, she was in disguise. But with Dodi, she could show herself off. I think she liked him very much. I don't know if she was in love with him, but she was in love with the idea of him. I think Diana wanted to get married again, and she wanted to have another child. Again, I think getting married again probably was a bit of a fantasy. Certainly getting married to the doctor that she was in love with was a fantasy, because it would never have worked out. It couldn't have worked for him. But she did want to get married again, very much so. In a way, I think she wanted to find someone that could work with her. In a way that it was what she'd hoped for when she married Prince Charles. When things were going well and they were doing things together, she sort of thought, she said to him, we could really change things together, the power of the two of us together. He wasn't going to talk in riddles, and she wasn't going to give a lot of speeches about what she was going to do. She was going to get out in the field and do it.
Look at the footage of the princess on that fatal night. Look at her going down in the elevator. Is that a woman in love? I don't think so. I knew the princess inside and out. That is not a woman with the man she's about to become engaged to, or the man she wants to marry.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has been seriously injured in a car accident in Paris.
We are getting one report from a news agency that the princess is suffering from concussion.
French radio is saying that the accident happened in western Paris when the car she was traveling in collided with another vehicle in a tunnel. The princess is reported to have been taken to hospital. There is no news of her condition, and as yet the report is unconfirmed.
But one wonders if one is being told the whole truth at the moment.
Stephen, I have to interrupt there because within the last few moments, the Press Association in Britain, citing unnamed British sources, has reported that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died. This is not yet confirmed by any official source.
The first report said that she was not badly injured, that one of the chasing paparazzi, a man called Roland Rat, opened the car door. He actually put his hand on her neck to feel her pulse and spoke to her and said, "Help is coming, it's on its way." He wouldn't have been talking to her unless she had been compos mentis, as long as she'd been aware of what was going on. When I first heard there'd been this appalling tragedy in Paris, I naturally assumed that it had been a terrible accident. But subsequently, everything that happened made me believe that it wasn't an accident and that it was a conspiracy. It's very hard to say that. I didn't want to believe it. But circumstances, many circumstances, have persuaded me to that conclusion. The London Evening Paper on Monday, which was published at about 10 o'clock in the morning, had a headline, "Drunk as a Skunk," and claimed that the car was traveling at 120 miles an hour, 180 kilometers an hour, claimed that the speedometer was stuck at that speed, claimed that the driver was 3 times over the legal limit. At that stage, on that Monday, they hadn't even analysed the blood samples allegedly taken from Henri Paul. It was established at the British inquest that the car was only going 60 miles an hour. Of course, that's fast, but it's not 120 miles an hour. And from then on, everything that happened led me to believe that it was, as the English jury eventually concluded, unlawful killing. And everything I saw during
the years. It took 10 years before there was an inquest in this country, in Britain. And everything I saw and everything I heard pointed to a cover-up. And you only have to look at all the evidence. The fact that all the cameras on the route to the crash were switched off. Unbelievable, truly unbelievable. The fact that the Fiat Uno, which allegedly collided with the Mercedes sedan, has never been found. The fact that the man who could have been driving it, a photographer called Anderson, he was found dead inside his car. Allegedly, he'd committed suicide, but he had 2 holes in his head, 2 shots. Well, when you're committing suicide, you don't need the second shot. 1 is quite enough.
The French investigation carried out a major search for the Fiat Uno, but they couldn't locate the car. And after this length of time, it's very unlikely that we shall do so.
The princess had written me a letter, and in that letter she said, "The next few months are the most difficult in my life. I fear that my husband is planning an accident in my car, head injuries, in order that he can remarry." Now, when you read those words, a prophecy the princess made 10 months before she died that came true, it's rather eerie. So I have no idea whether people were listening, people were following, people were watching. All I can believe is that no one would sign an order to murder the mother of the future King of England.
It would have been most unwelcome to the British royal family and the British establishment for Diana, the mother of the future king, to have married a Muslim. Had they had 2 beautiful children, the newspapers would have been writing about Diana and Dodi and their children. You would have had, in effect, in Britain, an alternative royal family. Now that could not have been allowed. It would not have been allowed because it would have taken the focus away from the House of Windsor. They didn't know, 1, whether she was pregnant, 2, whether they were coming back to London on the Monday to announce an engagement. Then it would have been too late. Diana rang one journalist who she trusted, Richard Kay, to say that she wanted to tell him something important. Well, we don't know what that was. It's very convenient for a lot of people that Diana, Princess of Wales, is no longer here. Had she lived, she would have been playing a major part in the bringing up of her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. When, of course, she was killed, there was no question of that. The princes were brought up within the royal family. There was no dispute about it. There couldn't be. Although in his eulogy at Westminster Abbey, her brother, Charles Spencer, Earl Spencer, made a very brilliant speech in which he referred, and not obliquely, quite openly, to that problem.
She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these 2 exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned.
This torch we'll always carry for our nation's golden child. Even though we try, the truth brings us to tears. All our words cannot express the joy you've brought us through the years. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out.
Did you know that the romance of the princess and Dodi Al-Fayed was 30 days from beginning to end? I spoke to her regularly when she was away. Have you seen Hasnat? I said, yes, I went for a drink with him last night. What does he think of me being here in the south of France with Dodi Al-Fayed? Well, he's not too pleased. Has he seen the pictures in the papers? Yes, he has, because you know his routine. You know every morning he goes to the corner shop and sees the press. You know that. And I know that's what you're doing. You're manipulating the world's media by having these pictures taken to show Hasnat who you're with. That's what Diana was saying to Hasnat Khan through those pictures in the world's media. And of course, Hasnat was bothered. And I didn't find out until recently that he called her the day before she died on her mobile phone. He called her to try and patch up their relationship. Had she returned to London, I truly believe the romance between Hasnat Khan and the princess would have been rekindled. It was too strong. It was too deep. They were true soulmates.